Well, ahoy hoy everyone. If I seem like I am not exactly chipper, it's because I have had a time with this computer. It's made this video a day late, hopefully not $1 short though. Hopefully it'll be just as good as it was, but man, my computer is not seeing my video card correctly after Microsoft forced an update. Everything looks fine on my screen, but if I'm being all pixelated here, all I can do is apologize. But hopefully this will be really good content that you can use and love. And sorry about that, my phone keeps bleeping. I put it on D&D and I don't feel like starting over, even though I've just started. So anyway, that's the kind of day it's been. But let's talk about security through obscurity. You've heard me talk about this before, but I haven't really done a video dedicated to it. And last month, Robert Graham of Errata Security did this really good article on it. So if my voice holds out, then we'll talk about the difference and why this is so important. You all have heard me say over and over again, obscurity is not security. It's a different thing entirely, and it's not really something you should put a whole lot of faith in. And this article actually does a really good reason of saying why. And he mentions the fallacy as being, if your only security is obscurity, it's bad. Wikipedia substantiates this, claiming experts advise that obscurity should never be the only security mechanism. And as Graham responds to that, nope, 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 nope. It is the very opposite of what you're supposed to understand. Obscurity has problems, always, even if you're just treating it as another layer of your defense in depth, as he says. For the difference, you've heard me talk before about Bruce Schneier's textbook from the 90s, Applied Cryptography, the one that really got me going on this. And what he said was, if you have a document you don't want someone to read, and you put it in a safe, and then you hide that safe in the basement of some random building in New York City, that's obscurity. But if I put it in the safe and I give you the safe, and I give you all the technical documents of how the safe is made, and some identical safes to play around with and see how it works, and you still cannot get in and access the document, then that's security, because I'm not just relying on the obscurity of hiding it somewhere random. Now, maybe sometimes obscurity might be good. You might want to, hide it somewhere anyway, just to be on the safe side. And then if they find it, you've still got all the security that the safe gives you. That's kind of the understanding that a lot of people have, that obscurity is kind of like this extra thing that you can do to give you something extra, but it really isn't. And there was one I talked about a few years ago on the podcast. I think I gave this guy either Biggest Bogan Emitter or Idiot Extraordinaire. One of those. He deserved both. It wasn't really a question of, one or the other. But he made out like he had this really great and wonderful new encryption algorithm, and here is something that's encrypted and no one is going to be able to decrypt it. And of course, he's not going to tell you anything about the algorithm because that would mess up the security. Now, I have no idea what this guy was doing, but I can easily do something that looks exactly the same, which is to just make a whole bunch of random mess, put it in the file, and tell everyone that's what I've done. So you haven't proven anything. And if it is true that he came up with this new encryption algorithm and his goal is to keep it secret, it's only going to be a matter of time before someone breaks the algorithm. Keeping algorithms secret is not what you want. What you want to do is encrypt a message, give it out, and then give everyone everything they need. Tell them all the details of the algorithm and how it works. Give them everything they need to decrypt it except the key. And if you do that and they still can't decrypt it, then you've got a good algorithm. And you also want to make sure that people can verify. So you might want to say, okay, until, December 31st of 2021, see if you can break through this. And on that point, I'll release the key and then you can decrypt it and see that all this was on the level the whole time. So that's the kind of thing you want to do. The only thing you want to keep secret is the encryption key or whatever the basis is. You don't want to try to keep the algorithm secret because that's the wrong way. Algorithms are too easy to break. You really want good peer review with encryption algorithms. The things that NIST is doing to try to do, like their latest one, is the post-quantum algorithms, the algorithms that are not going to be breakable by quantum computing. That's the kind of thing they're doing, going through all this public review, publicly created algorithms not associated with any government, so there shouldn't be any backdoors in there, etc. And that's what you need to do. So, back to Robert Graham. He says, the entire point of the fallacy is to counteract people's instinct to suppress information. The effort has failed. Instead, people have persevered in believing that obscurity is good, and this entire conversation is only about specific levels of security being bad. And so he gives a hypothetical with SSH, that secure shell. That's a good way you can get into a remote computer just with a text interface. But you can get in and run text commands on it and do all sorts of things. You can do anything you could do, at the terminal as a user. And if you can elevate to root, you can elevate and you can do all the stuff like that. So it's pretty important you want to secure it. So the typical SSH port is port 22. And so you might be all clever and thinking, I'm going to put it on a non-standard port. A random number, 7837. That's this random port I'm going to put it on. And then no hacker will ever be able to find that. So you do this. Then a 0 day is discovered. A worm goes through the internet, attacking secure shell. And it's exactly the sort of thing you were protecting against. And you're kind of feeling all smug and all good about yourself. Here's what really happens. Any systems on the network running secure shell on port 22 end up being protected, and they're fine. Yours is the one that gets infected and compromised. Why? Well, in this hypothetical scenario, your organization was keeping an eye on this. And they said, whoa, that's coming over secure shell. Okay, let's immediately put a filter on port 22 to check for this worm, to make sure it's going through all of the firewalls. They're checking for it. They're not going to let this 0 day through. They're not going to let this compromise through. And there we've protected everyone, right? Because no one would be stupid enough to run secure shell on a non-standard port, right? Probably didn't even enter their heads. That's the port. We just do it. Okay. Now, the worm itself runs a port scan, looking through all the ports, trying to see where the secure shell lives. And it finds your port at port 7837. Gets right in. This is the thing you have to understand. Hackers have a lot more of an incentive to be sneaky than the protectors do. It's really quite a job to trying to make yourself think so deviously for how a hacker might get through. So, the thought that, they might run a port scan to look for non-standard ports, that theoretically it should be something that occurs to them. In this example, it didn't. And so you trying to be all clever was actually what got you. So now he wants us to avoid using the cliche and use other phrases to communicate the concept. The problem is security through obscurity is nice and quick. It's something you can do to get to people. None of these that he's giving people are just that kind of quick and easy to remember. So really, when we talk about security through obscurity, we should mention all of these things, but we should be, punching them in the face with the fact of, figuratively speaking, that obscurity is not security. They're two entirely different things. So the phrases he gives: attackers can discover obscure details far better than you think, meaning obscurity is not as beneficial as you think. Defenders are hindered by obscure details, meaning there's a greater cost to obscurity than you think. We can build secure things that don't depend on obscurity. It's bad to suppress information that you think would help attackers. And just because there's obscurity involved doesn't mean this principle can be invoked. So what this all boils down to is we're not confident enough about security as much as we should be, and we are way overconfident about obscurity when we shouldn't be. So, he says your first instinct is to believe that adding obscurity through this non-standard SSH port made life harder for the attackers, and that it had no impact on defenders. The reality is that hackers were far better than you anticipated at finding unusual ports, and at the same time, you underestimated how this would impact defenders. He says, it's true that hiding secure shell ports might help. I'm just showing an overly negative hypothetical result to counteract your overly positive result. A robust cost versus benefit analysis might show that there is in fact a benefit. But in this case, no such robust argument exists. People are just in love with obscurity. They didn't sit down and plan this out and say, yes, it seems like it would really be best for our security initiatives that we run secure shell on non-standard ports. That wasn't done. It was just this idea of, ooh, I'm going to fake out the hackers by doing something different. No. He says, maybe hiding secure shell on non-standard ports is actually good. It's just that nobody has made an adequate argument for it. Lots of people love the idea, however. So, we can build secure things. Secure shell is a secure thing. It absolutely is secure. You can rely on it. The reason people love obscurity is because they have no faith in security. They believe that all security can be broken, and therefore every extra little bit you can layer on top will help. And I mean, there certainly is a truth to the fact that you want multiple layers of security, but people really just don't understand how secure things are. You can tell them that, okay, well, guessing this key or this way to possibly get around the key would take so much computational power that even if we put the resources of all of the computers in the world and had them work until the heat death of the universe, they still wouldn't be able to get it. And they still wouldn't be able to do that even if all of the other planets in the galaxy that there might be were running the same thing, and even the same thing in all of the other galaxies in the universe. It still wouldn't be enough time to drive that key before the heat death of the universe. The chances would be this really, really, really tiny number, 10 to the minus whatever, something ridiculous. Then they come back with, but there's still a chance, right? Yeah. No. There's basically no chance. Now, there might be a 0 day, there might be a bypass, so maybe another layer of security behind it, having a good password. Or even better, with Secure Shell, you can actually use certificates to do it, and they're a lot more secure than passwords. But the point is, he says, Secure Shell is seen as something that will eventually fail due to misconfiguration or an exploitable vulnerability, thus adding obscurity helps. There may be some truth to this, but your solution should be to address this problem specifically. For example, every CISO needs to have an automated script that will cause all of the alarms in their home and mobile to go off when an SSH CVE happens. In other words, if you're a security officer and a new report of a new vulnerability in Secure Shell comes out and you're relying on Secure Shell, you need to be getting notifications on your phone. You need to be getting, emails and every other way you can get notifications. You need to be where you can figure this out immediately so you can jump up and take action. Sensitive servers need to have canary accounts that will trigger alarms if they ever get compromised. Never use for your root account something that's named root or admin or anything like that. Make that a fake account. Get that access to nothing. You can give it a nice strong password, but the point is when someone tries to log in to that root account or admin account or whatever, when no one is supposed to be doing that, it can trigger the alarm. Hey, someone just tried to log into admin. He says planning for a Secure Shell failure is good planning, but not planning for it and instead just doing a bunch of hand-waving, obscuring things is bad strategy. The fact is that we can rely upon Secure Shell and should. Yes, a 0 day might happen, but that too should be addressed with known effective solutions, such as tracking CVEs and vulnerability management, not vague things like adding obscurity. And so the point that he makes is really good. It's not about obscurity, it's about transparency. Transparency is good, and it's good for security for exactly the same reason it's good in other areas, such as transparency in government, so we can hold politicians accountable. Yeah, that'll be the day. Only through transparency can we improve security. That was the point of Kirchhoff's principle from the 1880s till today, and I have a quickie on Kirchhoff's principle. I'll put it down below. The only trustworthy crypto algorithms are open public algorithms. Private algorithms are insecure. It's the point behind the full disclosure debate. Companies like Google who fully disclose in 90 days are trustworthy. Companies like Oracle, who worked hard to suppress vulnerable information, are untrustworthy. Companies who give bounties to vulnerable researchers to publish bugs are trustworthy, although if you look back on the podcast, we've pointed out a few problems with that. But for the most part, yeah, they're good. They're trustworthy. Those who sue or arrest researchers are untrustworthy, not to mention stupid. I'm sorry, it's just a stupid thing. So it's where security snake oil comes from. Our industry is rife with those who say, trust us, but we can't reveal details because that would help hackers. We know this statement to be categorically false. If their system were security, then transparency would not help hackers. QED, hiding details, means the system is fundamentally insecure. Why else would you need to hide them? Huh? If there's not anything in there that would be insecure, then people can know about it. If there is something in there that's insecure, that you're worried about a hacker finding out about, then it's an insecure system, and you need to fix whatever that problem is. So, it's like when an organization claims to store passwords securely, but refuses to tell you the algorithm, because that would reveal information hackers could use. Well, no, because if you say, okay, we're using bcrypt, and we're using this number of iterations and with this strength, the hackers are going to go, oh, gee, well, there's no point in that, is there? Because we don't have the computational ability for this. We know this to be false because if passwords were actually stored securely, knowing the algorithm wouldn't help hackers. But we users might need to know that, because if you're still using MD5, yeah, wait a minute, we need to figure out something. If you're going to use such an old and crappy algorithm, then we need to figure out something to secure ourselves or go and use someone else's service. But you can't say, oh, well, we can't get it out that we use MD5 because that'll help hackers. No, they'll figure it out. They will figure it out. We're using unsalted MD5, so all we have to do is keep it secret, right? Nope. Any given rainbow table is going to just immediately come up with all sorts of matches they can use to get in. His last point is that just because there's some kind of obscurity going on, it doesn't mean that we can automatically apply the concept. Closed source is a good example. Why won't they share their source code? If they say, because it helps hackers, then it's a violation of this principle. If they say, because trade secrets, then it's not a violation of this principle. They aren't saying obscurity is needed for security. They're saying obscurity is needed because they don't want other people copying their ideas. We can still say that the security of closed source is worse than open source because it usually is. Although, as we've seen, not always. There have been plenty of vulns in open source code, so the issues are clearly related. It's simply that the vendor isn't, in this hypothetical, violating the fallacy by claiming closed source means their code is more secure. The same is true in the blog post above of adding decoy cars to a presidential motorcade. I guess you could use the word obscurity here, but it has nothing to do with the principle under discussion. For one thing, we aren't talking about suppressing information. For another thing, presidential motorcades are inherently insecure. This isn't a crypto algorithm or service like SSH that can be trusted. It's a real crap system that is inherently insecure. Maybe hand-waving with half-assed solutions like varying travel routes, cell phone jammers to block IEDs, using decoy cars is, on the whole, the best compromise for a bad situation. Thus, stop invoking this principle every time obscurity happens. This just wears out the principle and breeds misunderstanding for the times we really do need it. So it's only when obscurity is used as a security feature. Oh, we can't reveal this or else it would cause security problems. We can't tell hackers about it. We can't tell potential attackers about it. That's when it's a problem. That's when it's security through obscurity. That's when it's a fallacy. And that's when you need to speak against it. So, he says, a couple years from now, I'm likely to write yet another blog post on this subject as I discover yet new misconceptions that people have developed. I'm rather shocked at this new notion that everyone suddenly believes that obscurity is bad as the only control, but good when added as a layer in a defense-in-depth situation. No, 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 no. Just no. These misconceptions happen for good reasons. One of which is that we sometimes forget our underlying assumptions and that people might not share these assumptions. When we look at Kirchhoff's principle, the underlying assumption is we can have a crypto algorithm that works like AES or Salsa 20 that cannot be broken. Therefore, adding obscurity on top of this adds no security. But when that assumption fails, such as a presidential motorcade that's always inherently insecure, just lob a missile at them, then the argument no longer applies. When teaching this principle, the problem we have is that a lot of people, especially students new to the field, are working from the assumption that everything is broken and no security can be relied upon. Thus, adding layers of obscurity always seems like a good idea. So security through obscurity is bad really means that there's this underlying idea. Am I talking about my political ideas of full disclosure of open source? Am I talking about vendor snake oil? Am I talking about dealing with newbies who prefer unnecessary and ineffective solutions over ones proven to work? It's hard to tell. The original discussion linked on Hacker News discussed none of these things. Going through the top-ranked responses seemed a list of people who just heard about the thing yesterday and wanted to give their uninformed hot take on what they think these words mean. And he talks about ASLR, which is address space layout randomization. We don't need to go into it, but basically it means putting somewhere at a random place in memory. Because if you're all nicely ordered about how you put things in memory, then an attacker writing a piece of malware might be able to predict where something is in memory and go through it. So, someone might say that's just security through obscurity. But the original cliche from Kirchhoff's principles wasn't about whether the algorithm itself added security, but whether the algorithm itself added obscurity, but whether the algorithm itself is obscure. You know, there's a difference between obscurity being incorporated as a thought, as a plan behind how you're going to do this, and just doing it to be obscure. In other words, if Microsoft was claiming Windows is secure because of ASLR, but they couldn't divulge details of how it worked because this would help hackers, then you would have a security through obscurity argument. Only in this instance can you invoke the cliche and be assured you're doing so correctly. I suppose you could argue that ASLR is only obscurity, that it provides no security. That's certainly true sometimes, but it's false other times. ASLR completely blocks certain classes of attacks on well-randomized 64-bit systems. It's such a compelling advantage that it's now a standard part of all 64-bit operating systems. Whatever ASLR does involving obscurity, it clearly adds security. In short, just because there's obscurity involved doesn't mean the cliche security through obscurity can be invoked. So really, this is only about the case of we're going to try to obscure something by configuring something in a way that we are relying on no one else figuring out how we did. We can't tell anyone else. You know, we don't want them to know that we're running Secure Shell on a non-standard port. It doesn't work. Never has worked. Then that also goes for all this stuff about, we need to try and sneak a backdoor so government can see what people are doing in encryption, because of all the bad stuff they could be doing. Well, it's the same problem if you're not going to tell everyone that. If you're going to rely on secrecy to do all of that and not, actual police work, which is not actually threatened by end-to-end encryption, then you've got a real security through obscurity problem. Because as soon as someone figures out how your backdoor works, there's nothing in mathematics that works differently if you have a warrant. There's nothing in mathematics that works differently if you're following the Constitution. The same math applies to everyone, everywhere. So never rely on obscurity. And that's the thing. Again, it might be a part of a plan, but all of the ramifications have to be thought through and added in. And it can't be done just for the sake of obscurity. So, thank you so much for watching. I hope this helped you understand. And if it did, and if you liked it, please go to donate.bogosity.tv. Give whatever you can, even if it's just a few pennies in crypto. Or if you want to subscribe at Patreon or Subscribestar, just $1 a month will get you early videos. You can participate in the monthly live stream. And it's $2 if you want to recommend a video, or $3 if you want to ask me a question in the monthly AMA. So any of those you'd like to do. But more than that, please spread these videos far and wide. I'm hearing from people about how these aren't just showing up in related videos. People are getting notified about them months after they're uploaded, and they're like, why am I only being told about this now? So the more you can share this, the more it helps. I think YouTube's algorithm is just completely screwed up. They're making a whole pig's ear of the thing. They're trying to do too many things with it. They're trying to satisfy too many contradictory ideas at once. And it just doesn't work. It's kind of like, say if you have Pandora or one of those apps. Pandora is like, okay, put in a song you like or an artist you like, and we'll give you similar music. Well, you can expand that. Okay, well, Pink Floyd. I've got a Pink Floyd station. Maybe I want to expand that a little bit. Maybe, I want to include, Genesis or something like that. Some other type of prog rock group. And that would work. But then, if I'm kind of an eclectic guy and I say, okay, I also want to add in Billy Joel and, I like jazz and, I really like Beethoven, and I try to do all of those in the same Pandora channel, I'm going to get all sorts of crazy music because now the algorithm has no idea what to do, and I should really make separate stations for those. I think that's the sort of thing that YouTube is running into with these algorithms. They're trying to do everything. They're trying to show you videos that you're interested in, and they're trying to show you relevant videos, and they're trying to show you videos from all sorts of different YouTubers to try and expand the range of people you're watching on YouTube, because they want you to spend more time on YouTube.com than they do on someone else's website. But at the same time, there's all this SJW nonsense going on. Basically every last little hint of everything is racist, and you've got all sorts of just crazy people on all over the world. Some of them are marking anti-gay stuff. Some of them are marking pro-gay stuff. And the result is just like all things that mention the LGBT community get banned, even if they're not talking about anything sexual or anything that, minors should have a problem with or anything like that. It's just crazy. They're trying to do so much of it. So the best thing to do is just be our own algorithms. Let's share around the videos we like. This video is going on YouTube. It's going on BitTube. It's going on Library. You can share it on any of those platforms. On BitTube and Library, you can even send me tips directly, things like that. So there are all sorts of ways to do this. This is what we're going to have to do. We need to put the social back in social media. It shouldn't be the big corporations that are determining how we interact with each other. It should just be us interacting with each other. So thank you so much. Until next time, stay strong and be free.